Okay, welcome to the last session. Thank you for hanging in there. So I'm going to be talking about posture and breath and how they are interrelated. Okay, how do I get these slides to move? There we go. Anyone in the room ever been told they've got bad posture? Or yeah, me too. How did it make you feel when someone tells you that? Not great, right? So just for today, we're going to say there's no such thing as bad posture from now on. And how can I say that? Well, let's put it this way. I'm not saying we can't improve our posture, and we've been hearing a lot about posture today and how important it is, and absolutely it's something we should be working on. But today, you're all sitting here, you've sat here all day, your body and your mind has been doing its absolute best to hold you up with the amount of information that it knows currently about posture. So if we want to change your posture, we have to give your body and your mind new experiences and new information. So I don't think we should be beating ourselves up about having bad posture. There's no such thing as good posture or bad posture, but we can certainly improve, and I'm hopefully going to show you today how we can go about doing that. Okay. And that's photos. You know, maybe you're like me, you like to lean against something and hold on to things when you get a little bit tired. Nothing wrong with that at all. Sometimes we need to do that. Okay, so what is posture? We hear a lot about it. So according to the Cambridge Dictionary, it's the way in which someone usually holds their shoulders, their neck, their back, or a particular position in which someone stands or sits, etc. Well, that's a very biomedical way of looking at the body, isn't it? And, I have to ask, is that really a good enough definition for something that tells the world who I am, how I'm feeling right now? Okay, so I'm going to just redefine it a little bit. Okay, I'm introducing, somebody was talking at, I think, the craniosacral talk. We heard of the word tensegrity. Let me introduce you to a tensegrity human. I found this on the internet, and I think he's wonderful. So tensegrity demonstrates the natural balance of forces, the dynamic tension network, an integrated movement system that is applicable to all living things. And that's from Graham Scarr, who wrote a book on biotensegrity. And this is really a new way of looking at how we hold ourselves. And if you look at that structure, you might have had one of those toys when you were little. You can kind of compress them, and then when you let go of the tension, it pings back up into its original shape. And what tensegrity is saying is that, really our bones, they don't touch, right? We have spaces, which are our joints, in between our bones. So our body is made up of space, and it expands. And all these little struts here are represented by elasticity. And that's how the body holds itself up. It's a tensional network full of space, and it's organized in this beautiful way. So that's tensegrity. And basically, it's a natural balance within our whole structure. Elasticity, and that's something that I really want to promote in my clients. It's something that we don't have enough of, elasticity. Good tension. So we hear a lot about tension, but we actually need tension in the body. Otherwise, we would all be collapsed on the floor. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with having tension. It's kind of, what kind of tension have we got? We need space, and we need breath. And we've been hearing a lot about breath today. Okay, so all of that helps create our tensional humans, and we are all tensional humans. Okay, so I said there's no such thing as bad posture, but should we be improving the posture? So absolutely yes, we should. So we can improve our postures to make it organized. Having better posture can put less pressure on our joints, on our organs, so we have less pain, and we can actually move more efficiently. So it's a really, really good thing. And if you look at these little diagrams, the red guy and the green guy, you can see the red one, he's kind of got that flat foot, so his knee is rolling in, his hip has collapsed on that side. And you can imagine how his ribs have to adjust to compensate for just having one foot that's slightly flatter than the other. And you can kind of put that in your body and think, well, what's that doing to his breathing? Does he have more tension on that side of his body? I don't know. And of course, all of us will probably respond differently to our different postures. But we can see that there is an impact there. And then the green one, when we have that lovely balanced posture, things sit a little bit easier. And I'm just going to say nobody has a posture like that, right? There's nobody. I've never seen a perfect posture. But the closer we can get to this, the better. Okay, so yes, we need to give the body, how do we get there? How do we get to these new experiences and this balanced posture where we have better breathing? So alignment does matter. You know, I hear a lot of people say alignment's not important. I believe it's really important when you're dealing with hypermobility, because as you can see in the red diagram, when you go out of alignment, you're going to start putting extra stress on your joints. You're going to have more pain. You're going to have more compression. You're going to have more strain. You're going to have wear and tear. All of those things start to snowball. So we want to work on our alignment. Poor alignment can lead to pain and strain. And the breath, as I've just mentioned, the breath can be compromised due to our posture. And let me show you how. So here's some perfect skeletons, okay? And again, nobody stands like that. But when you have these three heavy weights, so we were hearing about the weight of the head, right? So it's heavy. So we've got the head, the chest, and the pelvis. Really heavy, dense structures. Now, when they're held within that lovely tensegrity human, in this elastic structure, the muscles around those structures don't need to work as hard as they do when we're out of alignment, right? So that makes sense. So if you think of that tensegrity human, everything was beautifully balanced and things could start to work optimally. But when we start to go out of alignment, you're going to put more stress, more strain. Some muscles are going to get longer and stringier. Some muscles are going to get shorter and tighter. Okay, and then we start to have restrictions in our movement and our breath. The thing with posture, I think, you know, if we think about that Cambridge Dictionary definition, it's described as something very static. It's the way someone stands and holds themselves. So is this my posture? Is this how, when you see me walking about, is this how I'm standing? I don't think so. It's not a static thing. And I don't ever want it to be a static thing because I'm a moving being and I'm a breathing being. So it can't be set. You know, people are saying, I was told I had bad posture and I was told to stand up straight, pull my shoulders back, pull my tummy in. All of those things, I'm sure we've all heard it. But when you start talking about fixing and stacking your posture, you are actually putting more tension in your system, okay? Because we're so fixated, well, am I in the right place? Okay, so we don't want to go down that route. Posture is really dynamic, and it moves and it responds to breath, and it's responding to gravity. And gravity is with us all the time. So we better really learn how to deal with gravity if we're going to be a tensegrity human. It's constantly subject to the pull of gravity, and we have to meet gravity. Okay, and that's part of the problem, right, when you have hypermobility. And I'm going to show you some photos in a minute which will demonstrate what I mean. But with gravity, we can start to collapse in on ourselves sometimes. So the shape of our body is therefore a changing, dynamic one. It's not a fixed, static posture. You know, people are told to keep their pelvises in neutral when they walk. That's just not possible because you're going to cause a lot of compensatory patterning if you're trying to fix something in place. So the breath is going to change depending on your posture, and the posture is going to change depending on your breath. So they're kind of best friends, and if one does one, the other one wants to join in, right? And they're going to influence each other. And, you know, people talk about posture, and I think we get very fixated on the muscles, and muscles are obviously a huge part of it, but they're not the only guys. They play an important role, but posture is influenced by lots of things, and oftentimes we don't hear enough about the other things. So, this is me. Sometimes I might look like this, okay? This is when you might see me feeling a bit tired, a bit fatigued. Maybe I'm in pain or I'm emotionally drained, or maybe I've been shutting down a little bit in social situations. So if you look at that posture, so I'm kind of hanging back a little bit, Can you think about what my breath might be doing there? Yeah, it's a little bit compressed, isn't it? My shoulders are forward, everything's a little bit down. Thank you. So this is not a great posture, but it's not a bad posture because of how I might be feeling. That's how my body has defaulted to, okay? But sometimes, probably today, standing up here, when I watch this back, I'm going to go, oh no, I've done my presentation posture. A little bit more alert, hypervigilant. My sympathetic nervous system is in overdrive. And I'm seeking my stability by locking my joints. Yeah, so big arch in my back. You know, what's my breath doing here? Everything's been pushed out into the front. It's getting hyper stretched here, compressed in the back. Not great either, but again, some days I might look like that. Oop. Generally, I try and look like this. So this is the balanced posture. This is, you know, our tensegrity human, the green picture that we saw earlier. A more relaxed state. The breath is a little bit more balanced. Can you see that I have space in the front and the back of my body? Nothing's being squashed or compressed. So my breath has a better chance now to expand in that tensegrity tensional network. A little bit calmer. Don't know if you feel that just by looking at the picture. It looks a little bit more settled, yeah, a little bit more safe, a little bit more grounded into our feet. Yeah, and our feet are so important in giving us that stable posture. So balance pressure front and back. So in those other two pictures, I didn't have balance pressure. So my abdominals were being squashed, either squashed or stretched. My back muscles were being either squashed or stretched. And I was putting a lot of pressure on my joints, okay? So here, I've got a much better balance. And when we start to hold ourselves like this, we start to feel a little bit emotionally well. Yeah, where I'm not in that collapsed state, but I'm not in that hypervigilant state. Okay, so the breath is very much connected to our emotions, and posture is very much connected to our emotions as well. And that's one thing you never hear people talk about when they talk about posture. Nobody talks about that it's an emotional state as well. Okay, so if I'm feeling tired and down, my posture is probably going to change. I bet if you watch someone walking down the street, next time you go out, watch people walking, and I bet you can tell who's had a good day, who's happy and confident, and who's had a bad day. Without speaking to them, their posture will tell you how they're feeling. Physically well, because I'm more balanced, I'm likely to have less pain on my joints in this posture. And I'm a little bit more self-aware. Yeah, I can feel myself in the ground. Yeah, I've got an open chest, eyes are on the horizon. Breath is going to be able to just expand within that structure. And I call this quiet standing. Yeah, you're using, ideally, we want to be using the least amount of muscular effort to hold ourselves up. Now, in those other two pictures, you could probably tell there was, certainly in the hypervigilant one, I was using a lot of muscular effort just to be upright. That's going to make me, you know, very fatigued in the long run. And it says here in red that the posture will default to old patterns and habits under stress or pain. So, like now, I'm speaking to all of you, and my system is like, oh, there's a lot going on here. I've got to think, I've got to speak. There are lights, there are people. Maybe I'll start going into that hypervigilant posture because your brain is like, there's so much going on. I can't also think about not locking your knees and pulling your shoulders back and all of those things we know are good postural things. So again, don't beat yourself up. You will probably slip and you'll catch yourself locking your knees or having this posture. As long as you become aware of it, you can gently get yourself out of it. Okay? But it's not about fixing and forcing it, because that's just going to long-term give us more pain. Oop. I'll get you. So how do we get to this posture? One day I'll learn to use this. So these are the 6 principles of my IMM, the integral movement method. And you can see that breath is the first principle. So when I start working with people, we're looking at their breath patterns, their breathing patterns. Oftentimes I'm seeing breathing pattern disorders and dysfunctions and tension held in the thorax. And people we don't know how to breathe. And we spend a lot of time on our computers and our phones and everything is squashed and the breath is getting compromised. So breath is the first thing I look at. Right at the bottom is posture. So when we've gone through relaxation, letting go of some of that habitual tension, proprioceptive exercises, stability, balance of the front and the back of the body, then through all of that, a different posture will emerge. But it's not because I intentionally said, right, I've got to stand up straight and do all these things I've been told mean that I've got good posture. So appropriate, safe breathing experiences that introduce your system to new experiences with the least amount of muscular effort. And if you came to the fascial workshop this morning, we were actually talking about the softening and doing even our breathing practice with the least amount of effort. Yeah, we didn't want to put tension in the system. So posture in humans is often driven by social concepts of how we think or we're told good posture should look and being told that we have bad posture. I don't know when you're a child whether you were told to stand up straight and pull your shoulders back and all of those things we heard when we were children and we were dealing with this condition. Maybe we didn't have the best posture. But all of those things go into our system as conditioning, okay? So we have this concept of posture. Animals, they don't have that issue, yeah? It's an unconscious response, and that's where we need to get to with our posture. It needs to become an unconscious response because of the new information we have delivered to it, and then it can incorporate that into your system and how you hold yourself. Yeah, so we've probably been conditioned by stand up straight, pull your shoulders back, suck your tummy in, all of those tension-led patterns that actually are quite uncomfortable and probably not sustainable. I could easily have everyone stand up and I could talk you into a good posture. I could do that. The minute you walk out that door, you'll go, oh my goodness, that was such hard, I can't hold that posture. That was so painful and such hard work. Because it doesn't work like that. Posture has to become an unconscious response, okay? So it's not about being taught posture, because that leads, when we're taught posture, it leads to fixed muscular patterns, tension-led patterns, and let's face it, we've got enough tension in our lives, physically and emotionally, living with these chronic conditions. Why are we putting more tension in our bodies by forcing ourselves to try and have this perfect posture, which doesn't exist, does not exist. So your breath will impact your posture 100%, yeah? So if we all slump in our chairs, let's all just do it carefully, but if you slump in your chair and try and take a breath now, just try and take a breath in, it's gonna feel quite uncomfortable because you've compressed everything, okay? If we then lengthened a little bit and tried to take a breath in, you'll probably find it's a little bit easier. So your breath is going to impact your posture and vice versa because they're interplaying with each other all the time. The breath will create the posture, and the posture enables the breath to flow and expand. So if I'm in my collapsed posture because I'm tired, my breath can't flow and expand, how's that going to impact my energy levels? Yeah, it's all going to have this snowball effect. So we're going to do a super quick 1-minute exercise because I've only got 1 minute left. If we just sit in our chair, and you don't have to do it, and obviously look after yourselves, don't do anything that doesn't feel right, but just sit in your chair with your feet on the ground, and if you want to, you can close your eyes. So all I want you to feel, and it's again not about being perfect, when you take an inhale, the inhale kind of very subtly draws us in and up, Yeah, there's an inflation on the inhale. So as we inhale, there's a feeling of up the front of the body. As you exhale, there's a weightiness that goes down the back of the body. And the postural muscles predominantly live in the back of our body. So those are the ones that are designed to hold us up. They've got more stamina than the fast twitch muscles. So just do that a couple of times. See if you can feel that as you breathe in, there's a feeling of drawing up the front of the body. And as you breathe out, we're going down the back of the body. And as we continue to do this cycle, the pelvis gets to settle heavier into the chair. And again, it starts to give you that ease of holding yourself up. So if you remember nothing from today, just remember up the front and down the back. Okay, so very quickly, what influences our posture? The skeletal frame, yeah, so if I stand like this and this, yeah, obviously it's changed my posture. The connective tissue and our overall muscle tone, that's why conditioning is so important. I need to have improved muscle tone. Gravity, the constant pull of gravity, pulling me down. We've got to learn to react to gravity. Fascia, which we're going to hear more about on Saturday. We've got a whole section on how fascia changes our posture. Pain, obviously, when we're in pain, yeah, we don't want to be open and expansive. We want to kind of shut down, yeah, go into that fetal position. So chronic pain, when you live with these conditions, it is going to impact your posture. Fatigue, obviously, if I'm tired, I'm going to change my posture. Gut health, yeah? If I've got problems in my gut, I might be holding, when I walk, I might not want to expand because it hurts, so I might be a little bit, yeah? So lots of different things. POTS, obviously dysautonomia, that's going to change if I'm worried about falling, yeah, and fainting, and, you know, I'm not going to be feeling confident and open in my posture, yeah? I'm going to be a bit more protective. And emotions, our emotional well-being definitely impacts our posture. Okay, and you know what? Everyone had loads of references, and I'm thinking, there was only one paper I found on posture in the hypermobile population. And here it is, if you'd like to read it. But posture and pain in persons, it's an old one, because it's still called benign joint hypermobility. But yeah, that was the only paper, the only research that was done specifically on posture in this population. But they did find significant differences between a hypermobile patient's posture and their control group, which is interesting. So it's a good read if you'd like to look a little bit more into that. And the musculoskeletal system, this was what else they found. The musculoskeletal system allowed for a greater range of motion in the hypermobiles that led to abnormal patterns that became habitual and subconscious. Do you remember I said at the beginning that our posture needs to become an unconscious reaction? Look what they found. They found that because of our bigger ranges, we adopted these habits that became subconscious. So if we can do it one way, which is not beneficial to us, we can retrain our approach and our brain to have an easier posture that is also becoming subconscious and a response rather than a fixed posture. So then they recommended posture re-education, which improved pain levels and the quality of life. Yeah, so when you work on posture in the right way, it is going to improve our pain levels, which is fabulous, right? And I think that is it. So yeah, in summary, posture is dynamic. It will change depending on your emotional state and therefore your breath, because your emotions are obviously related to your breath. Breath and emotions are totally linked. Through integrated movement patterning and breath work, the posture will change. It will change over time. And it can't be taught. As I said, I could teach you, I could get you all up and talk you into this wonderful, perfect posture, but it wouldn't be embodied. You wouldn't feel it and you wouldn't be able to maintain it because we haven't yet given your body the right information to be able to maintain it. So eventually we want to do that so that it becomes unconscious. Change the breath, change the posture. Yeah, so when we breathe differently, the posture is going to respond and vice versa. And that is that. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.